David Brewster here with a new episode of Breaking Chords, and this is Paul Gilbert String-Skipping Secrets, and this is technically the 10th episode related to Paul Gilbert that I've created here on my channel. There are episodes of chord play for Racer X and Mr. Big. There's 3 for All episodes looking at some of Paul's licks. Also Bruce Bouillet, too, the other guitarist in Racer X. And there's also Breaking Chords episodes looking at some of his string-skipping, secrets and ideas. And it was the recent DeMartini Sequence episode that I created. And in the comments section, there were people asking for the sequence I included at the end. We were looking at Paul Gilbert's, live solo lick that features DeMartini Sequence. But then he also threw in the string skipping shape, and I realized, after the fact, oh, I didn't show the sequence there. Whoops. But definitely, Paul Gilbert's a legendary guitarist, and I've learned a ton, studying his educational material. A legend. Aside from the request that poured in, asking for the sequence that I played in the DeMartini Sequence episode, also, Mr. Big's on their big farewell tour this year, and I've been following some of their posts and photos and videos and stuff, and they're going to continue this tour all the way till August, so if they're going to come anywhere near you, totally go see Mr. Big. They rule. Okay, to get started here, we're basically in the key of D to start with, and then we're going to move to another key, and since we have looked at these arpeggios before, we're going to basically review and then dive even deeper and start getting into progressions and sequences and stuff like that, so you can actually use this in music. So we're in drop D, and we're going to start with D major right there. So I'm in drop D tuning, and you could play any D major chord. I just wanted to play it right there to kind of put it in the same neighborhood as far as where the arpeggio is. So there's D major, the chord. And then D major, the string skipped arpeggios right here. Definitely a Paul Gilbert, approved shape right there. There's your D, F sharp, A, D, and F sharp, like that. So that's D major, right? And you can see we're basically kind of, opening up your hand too as you reach the top. Like that. So there's D major. Now to convert that to D minor, all we have to do is lower the third. So that F sharp right there is going to move back to an F. There's D minor, the chord, and then D minor, the arpeggio, we can play like this. So just like D major, had an F sharp here and right there. All we're changing is that F sharp to F. So now you've got an F here and an F right there. So there's major, minor, and then also just to kind of throw out another, variation here, how about diminished right here? So there's D diminished, and we could play that like this. There's your D, F, A flat, D and F now. So far we had major, minor, and diminished right there. So here are some fretboard images kind of showing you, kind of what's happening as we move from arpeggio to arpeggio, just like this. Let's go ahead and start sequencing those shapes right off the bat here. So let's start with D major, and this first sequence I'm going to share, we're going to start on that lower, root note, move all the way up to the higher D, and then go back down to that lower D, and then basically move all the way through the arpeggio, and at the end there's like a little stutter before you start it over again. Something like this. So really slow, we're doing this. And that's one cycle right there. Kind of giving you like a little movement, instead of just playing it straight up and down. We're kind of like mixing those notes together and creating a sequence of notes like that. Now let's convert that to minor. Let's just change the F sharps to F and then keep everything else the same, and we'll have this. Right, so major, minor, about that diminished shape? We could do this. So you're really just kind of learning a different way of kind of reworking those notes and kind of mixing them together and creating, you know, melodies and sequences, obviously, and really kind of getting a feel for what that, you know, sounds like and also feels like on the fretboard. So far we basically located D major string skipped, converted that to D minor, and then also converted that to D diminished, and then we also located like a basic sequence you can play. So let's move all this information, you know, that was on a D string root, let's move it over a set of strings to an A string root. We're going to basically work through the same process, but now we're going to be in the key of A. So instead of D major and D minor and D diminished, now we're going to start with A major right here. Right? And once again, you could play any A major chord you want. I'm just kind of putting it in the basic neighborhood right here. So there's A major. Take that D major arpeggio we played here. Just move it down a set of strings, start right there on A. And we're kind of borrowing that same fingering too, like the same, you know, pattern of notes. Just on a different set of strings. So there's D major, shift it over A major. Like that. Right? Now convert that to A minor. Now C sharps are going to move to C, just like we had, you know, F sharps moving to F for D, but now we're in the key of A. So A major, converted to A minor, exact same shape we had for D, but now in A minor, right? And then of course diminished too, right? So we basically had A major, A minor, and now A diminished, that E flat thrown in there. And that shape's just like D diminished, but right here. Right? So A major, A minor, and A diminished. And then here's those fretboard diagrams to kind of help you see what we did. The exact same thing we did in D, but now we're in A. So now that we've moved to the key of A, let's sequence those arpeggios, but let's locate a different sequence. Let's not use the same one we did for D. So in D, we were doing that low to high thing, right? The lower octave to the higher one, and then back down, and then all the way through it, and then that little zigzag at the end. So for A, let's do the opposite of that. Let's start high, and then we're going to move our way low. So that higher A down to the lower A, and then all the way through the arpeggio. And then we have this little leapfrog at the end between that A and E note. Something like this. Right? So high to low, and then all the way through it. And then right there, there's that little leapfrog. Change it to minor. Once again, just change, you know, C sharp to C, and there's A minor right there. What about diminished right here? And we're really just locating different ways of playing through those arpeggios instead of just doing it, you know, straight up and down. And playing sequences like that, it's a big challenge for sure. So now that we have these shapes under your fingers, let's start moving them through progressions. And this is actually going to steer you toward actually creating music with this. Instead of just treating it like some kind of a guitar trick, we're actually going to create some music here, or at least steer you towards some music. And let's just start with real basic progression, just a D to A, like a 1-5 in D major, right? You know, however you want to play it, but then just spell that out using those arpeggios. D major, A major. Right? And you can use any sequence you want. I just did that. You could literally create any kind of sequence there, but the important thing there is you're learning how to move it. And it's pretty easy to do right there because we're just moving to a different set of strings, right? What about those minor shapes? Let's switch it to A minor to D minor. Think of that like a 1-4 in A minor, right? You know, something like that. And you could do A minor and then D minor. Learning how you can kind of mix those together and kind of weave, you know, from D to A or A to D. And then obviously you can start moving into other keys too. Move it into C or B flat or G or something and just see what happens. Okay, so now that we've investigated these different string skipping shapes and moved through, you know, D major, D minor, and D diminished, and then shifted that to A, and then we started, you know, sequencing and creating chord progressions, let's go ahead and pick up that Paul Gilbert sequence that I featured in the DeMartini Sequence episode. This also appears in the Mr. Big Live concert home video. And Paul originally played this in C sharp minor, but I'm going to move it up a half step and put it in D minor, just so it's in line with what we've already looked at in this episode. But the sequence is like this. You know, something like that. In C sharp minor, it sounds like this. Just move it to D. So it's D minor. We're going to start at the top right here. We're going to break it in half as well. So the first half we're doing, right? One more time. One more time, really slow. Second half. One more time with the second half. And the second half really slow. Now the whole sequence really slow. So I'm not going to lie, that's a very difficult and advanced sequence, but it's a great example of kind of pushing this, you know, to the extreme. You know, we had the basic shapes, and we kind of looked at some basic sequences, and that's definitely not basic. That's very advanced, the way it kind of twists and turns around. There's a lot of leapfrogging, you know, going on, but such a cool sequence, and way more interesting than just this. You know, just playing it straight up or straight back down. The way it kind of moves around is so cool. And also the inclusion of notes outside the arpeggio too. That's kind of an eye-opening, you know, concept right there too. Okay, last but not least, we're going to kick all this information up yet another notch. And now we're going to take these string skipping arpeggios and we're going to basically arrange them in a 4-chord progression. So we're literally kind of moving this toward making some actual music. And the progression, definitely very common in classical music. We're going to have D minor, G minor, G sharp diminished to A major. You know, very common progression for sure, especially in classical music. One more time there, D minor, G minor, G sharp diminished to A major. So let's start with D minor right here. I'm going to use that sequence right there to G minor. So once again, there was D minor, G minor, and right there is G sharp diminished, and then finally A major right there. So D minor, G minor, G sharp diminished, A major. You know, one more time where I'm not talking over that. So D minor, G minor, G sharp diminished, and then finally A major. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Breaking Chords with Paul Gilbert String-Skipping Secrets, and definitely I've learned a ton of things studying Paul Gilbert's educational and instructional material. His old videos from back in the day, the Intense Rock, series, Terrifying Guitar Trip and some of that stuff, his Terrifying Guitar 101, columns that were in Guitar Player magazine, various other guitar magazine, lessons and articles and stuff. And there's just all this insight and really interesting things surrounding Paul Gilbert. And I've definitely been a Racer X and Mr. Big fan since I was a teenager in high school. And I've learned tons, studying his music and his ideas. A legend, for sure. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Layout Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.